Oh, these clubs are so easy to hit.
Maybe, Dan, but I think I've got one easier.
Sound like a rocket ship. Well, welcome to the showdown, everybody. Welcome, Lee.
Thank you.
We've got a couple of little beauties coming onto the show this week for you. I've brought in the 11. Not many people have heard of the 11, but if you haven't checked out the 11 products, make sure you head over to a review that we did talking about all the 11. I did this with Leicester.
Yeah.
Really interesting club, so easy to hit. So easy, like game-changing stuff. If we'd have started golf this way, I think I'll see a lot more players using hybrid irons. But you've got something similar as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I thought, well, you'll bring in a hybrid iron, so I'm going to bring a hybrid iron, and I've got the new Wilson Launchpad. I think it's probably comparable. Obviously, it's not the same size as this, but if we're going to go in hybrid irons,
yeah,
I think Wilson probably do one of the better versions of it. So let's go head-to-head on what is going to be the easiest golf clubs we'll hit all year.
So when it comes to hybrid irons, it's all about forgiveness. It's all about those off-centered strikes and also trying to get the ball up in the air. A lot of players really struggle to get the ball up in the air, especially when we're talking about long irons. And the big difference between these two irons that we're putting head-to-head today is I feel like the 11 is the type of player coming in maybe who enjoys using their fairway woods coming down into their irons, whereas the Wilson is going to be maybe looking more like an iron and then working up to your fairway woods. So if you're somebody who enjoys using fairway woods, I think the 11 product is probably going to work quite nicely for you. And when you look down at the 11 to start off with, I don't know if it's the face on it with that little bit of white sort of lines that run across the middle of the face, but it looks lofty. Now remember, we're using 6 irons for this test, 27 degrees of loft, but it does look lofty, which for a lot of golfers is going to give them, well, plenty of confidence. Water. And just in the few shots that I'm hitting there, and I can see it as the ball goes into the screen, instantly I can see the ball popping higher off the face, but also those off-centre strikes. I'm not somebody that rips it out the middle every time. I'm somebody that does kind of scatter it around the club face a little bit. So having those off-centered strikes covered by high MOI, which is what these clubs are all about, is only going to give us confidence, only going to give us the support that we need to hit better shots. And then when I start off with the Wilson, I'm instantly looking at an iron. It's more of an iron look, even though it has that sort of chunky bit on the back. It's almost like they've camouflaged it with a nice thick top line on the top here, but then on the back, because they've kind of blackened it out, it kind of looks like it's not even there. It's like an infinity bit on the top of the club, which again gives you more of an iron look, but knowing that the help is there behind the club. Now I'm a big fan of this when it comes to ping clubs. When you look down at ping clubs, you've got this little white streak line at the bottom in the bottom groove. Again, it just allows you to be able to manipulate the face and get yourself square to the ball, to the target line. Little things like that can only help. Now remember, both of these clubs have been fitted for me, so both of them sort of standard in their sort of lie angle. They've both got a stiff graphite shaft in them, so really for me it's all about trying to get the best performance out of them. But feel off the face, definitely more of a harder feel off the face of the Wilson compared to the 11, which feels almost like a little bit, almost softer, a little bit tinnier off the face. This one definitely sensing like it's a bit more like an iron.
So Dan, I chose this one to go up against because I think Wilson do some of the best hybrid irons. And if you watch our hybrid iron video that we did back in Torquay all those years ago, which will be up here, you will see that, you know, we performed well with them. And I think a lot more people should go into clubs like this, especially as you get a little bit older, possibly, as your swing speed slows down. Because like you said, all this is going to do is help you get the ball in the air, and the forgiveness of it is just like nothing you'll ever play. Like Dan said, it looks exactly like an iron. It's got the white line there, and if you look at it from the top, it just looks like a thick, chunky iron that you'd get from Callaway or TaylorMade. Nothing is out there that makes it look as fat as it is at the bottom. So from an iron player point of view, it looks exactly like you want it to look like. And when it comes to sound and feel, it just feels and sounds like any normal game improvement or big chunky club would do. There's nothing too tinny because of that extra real estate. and that went up in the air. And now we move into the 11. The first thing I like is the blacked out part of it. It's dead stealthy, very murdered out, black shaft, black head, black face, black grip. So everything about it, looks-wise, is really nice, but it definitely looks more like a hybrid than an iron. Now, in this 6 iron, I think that's fine, but when it gets down to a pitching wedge, I'm trying to picture that in my mind, what that will look like. And for someone like me, I'm just thinking, how does that work? But when it comes to like looks down at the ball, I feel like I'm hitting a hybrid. Looks like a hybrid, and I'm probably going to feel like a hybrid. Now I got that one out of the toe, as you can see. But one thing you get with it is the forgiveness. So it still launched high. It still went sort of 165 yards. So it's, you know, I've been punished for a bad shot, but the forgiveness is there. And one thing you're not going to struggle to do with this club is get the ball in the air. And I'm just going to hold that. So look, sound and feel, like this looks and sounds like a hybrid. That looks and sounds like an iron. So they're two very different sounds for me. So I'm going to struggle to decide which one I think's best. So Dan, first parameter is the looks of the club. Which one are you giving it to and why?
I'm going to go for the looks-wise, I'm going to go with the Wilson, purely because I'm more of an iron player. I'm not a big fan of using hybrids throughout my bag. Historically been a bit inconsistent with hybrids, as in shaping them and keeping control of them. So looks-wise, I'm going to give it to the Wilson on this one. Yourself?
And I'm going to do exactly the same thing because I prefer the look of the iron, and I know we've got one, but I just worry what that's going to look like in a wedge.
Okay.
Whereas I think this will look more like an iron and you won't see the back.
Interesting, considering that you play hybrids and you enjoy your hybrids, don't you?
Yeah, but I enjoy them for that long shot. I don't feel like I would have the control. And maybe that's a test for out in the club where we go and play with these as a full set. But I just don't feel like I'd have the control from like 150, 100 yards in with the 9, 8 pitching wedge of these as I would with these.
Fair enough.
So looks-wise, and I'm like you say, I'm an iron player, so I'm giving it to the Wilson.
Next.
Sound and feel.
100% 11. I like that softer kind of sense off the face. It's not too tinny. It's just, it feels really nice and buttery off the face. Yeah. If you compare it to the Wilson, which it almost sounds, not clunky, because that would be unfair, but definitely it's firmer off the face, quite a little bit louder off the face. So I'm going to go with 11.
Okay, I like loud.
You like loud, yeah.
I'm going to go for the Wilson, more on the feel than the sound. I do like the sound of this because I like the sound of hybrids. I like that tinny sound, but I think this feels more like an iron. It feels more like I want it to feel like when I'm playing an iron. So I'm going to give the feel and sound to the Wilson.
Tech then.
First, we'll start with the Wilson Launchpad. The Wilson Launchpad is a super game improvement iron featuring a generative design turf interaction sole and tuned to help players hit the ball more cleanly and get it airborne. The weight has been removed and the mass lowered to launch the ball higher and fly further. As a 7 iron, this is 30 degrees, and as a 6 iron, it's 27 degrees. If we move into the 11 has a deep centre of gravity for higher launch perimeter weighting to increase forgiveness for off-centre hits. Playable from any lie with a new sole design and high launch for increased carry. Now the 7 iron in this is 31 degrees, but the 6 iron is 27 degrees. So they are comparable as they are as 6 irons. Now this is a difficult one because there's not really a great deal of tech in these, as in they're just fat and forgiving. And I'll stand here and be proven wrong, but I don't think there's anybody else doing this, as in a hybrid iron.
Big hybrid iron.
A hybrid iron set. You know, these
there's a lot doing that.
There's a lot doing the irons that are hybrid.
Cobra do them, Wilson do them, Cleveland do them. I'm trying to think of some others.
They're the main 3 that I was thinking.
I've seen some Slazengers out there. But nothing like you're saying in the hybrid effect.
No, so I think
right the way through.
You know, it could be innovative. You know, I think this, if more people played this and we got more feedback of how it performs for people, I think this can help a lot of people play better golf as your swing speed slows down or as you're coming into golf.
Interestingly, when we did our review on this club, there was a lot of people that phoned up and either bought one or or actually bought a set of them,
Yeah.
in maybe even 4 or 5 of them at one time. So if you're one of those people who actually use 11 or use something very similar to this throughout the set, like to hear down in the comments. So you're going to go then more towards 11?
Yeah, because I just think it's more innovative, and if there are other people doing it,
Yeah.
I don't know of them. And
No.
you know, I've been around all the brands as a fitter, so
Yeah, okay.
unless you know of somebody.
No, now you've said it, I can't rack my brain as to, maybe in generations, maybe in times gone by, there may have been a set out there, but nothing certainly on the market that I can remember right now. I get that, I get what you're saying there. And do you know what, I'm going to follow suit with that. I'm going to give it to 11 purely on the basis that I think actually tech-wise, they're both low, they both hit it up in the air, CG push further back, all of that stuff that's going on, but there's nothing that really jumps out other than the fact that there's other products, there's other brands out there doing that type of product.
Yeah.
Nobody really doing this.
No. Right, shall we hit some numbers?
Yeah, hit
Shall
some
we
balls,
hit some balls,
get some numbers.
Get some numbers.
Let's do that. Let's go.
Hit some numbers. 7. Okay, so let's talk my numbers. And when you hear these numbers, you're probably going to think, Lee, why aren't you buying these golf clubs? So we'll start with the Wilson first. Average ball speed 128, but for me it's the consistency of the ball speed that I love on that. Only varying in 4 miles an hour from those shots. And it's where I would probably be with like a 6-iron anyway. Launch 19.5, there or thereabouts, not too high launching for what is a 27-degree 6-iron. The problem for me is the spin is a little bit too low. I'd probably want that up into the mid-5s, going towards 6s for a 6-iron. But overall carry distance, average 182, but it's the consistency. There's only 3 yards in those 5 shots, which is like, it's unheard of for me. So absolutely fantastic numbers with the Wilson. Moving down to the 11, it's a similar kind of story. 127.6, so not a lot to choose between them in ball speed. Launch 18.9, when you take out standard deviation. With the Wilson, they're going to be almost identical. But the one thing for me that I love about the 11 is that spin is now up as an average at 5.760, which is where I'd want my 6-iron to be. So great spin. Because of that, the distance has dropped down to 177. But even over those 5 shots, there's only an 8-yard gap from front to back. Overall dispersion and distance with these is bang on where I'd want it to be. I do expect it to be a little bit lower because of the high spin, but there's not a lot to choose from between them when it comes to the actual numbers.
Let's look at my numbers then. Ball speed off the face. If we go with the 11 to start us off, 123.5 on an average, but if you look up and down that list there, it's very consistent. If you compare that to the Wilson at 122.4, just a one shot that was a slight drop off there, and I think I just caught it a little high in the face, which dropped off spin, as you can see as you go across there, but it also dropped off in ball speed there. So launching off the face, 15.8 compared to 18.4. So really, I was really surprised with this. I honestly thought I was going to launch that 11 maybe just a fraction higher off the face, but actually coming out a little lower than what I'm getting out of the Wilson. If we go on spin, and we talked about, or Lee talked about it just a moment ago with his spin, I'm seeing very similar numbers than he's getting there, with the difference between the two. If we look, an average of 5,000 revs out of that Wilson compared to 6,200, nearly 6.3 out of the 11. And when Lee talked about consistency, this is when you want to get your spin up to manage the control from front to back a lot of the time. So if you're coming out of, you know, wet, dewy conditions, or maybe a little bit of rough, you're going to see that drop off just a little bit more. So having high spin just to get you going with is only a benefit. And there's always going to be a point where you kind of go too high. But for us here, around 6,500 revs out of a 6-iron, it's fantastic. Peaking out 32 yards high with the 11 compared to 35 yards high with the Wilson. And then 170 average carry with the 11 compared to 174 average carry with the Wilson. So all in all, pretty good numbers. Spin wise, probably focusing more on the 11, but then good launch what I'm getting out of the Wilson. So summary then, Lee.
Okay, let's start with distance. So distance, the Wilson wins for both of us.
Yep.
I think that's more based on the low spin than anything else.
100%. 4 yard. I think it was 4 yard gain out of the Wilson for me.
So there wasn't a lot in it. They were very comparable. If the spin had been the same, they'd probably been the same. But Wilson wins on distance.
Okay.
Dispersion for you, Dan. So this is front to back, left to right as an ellipse.
Yep.
As a square yardage. The Wilson is 326.5 square yards. That's the area.
Okay.
And the 11 is 259.05 square yards.
So I'm more accurate with the 11 than I am the Wilson.
So you're more accurate with the 11 than you are the Wilson.
Okay.
And again, that could be spin related.
Yeah.
But so dispersion goes to the 11. Now then, Daniel, unheard of. Dispersion for me with the Wilson. In fact, we'll do the 11 first because this is quite impressive. 188.4 square yards.
You are accurate. You were hitting some decent shots with these clubs.
Yeah. So that's an ellipse from 180 yards out.
Yeah. So you've beaten me with the 11.
I've beaten you by the 11 by 72 square yards. Wilson, 58 square yards.
Have you thrown a couple? Is that what you've done? You've thrown a couple in
58
there.
square yards. So my front to back was only 3 yards.
Yeah.
So that's really tightened it that way.
Yeah.
And then left to right, I think there was about a 20 yard left to right. So by the time you put all that in, the surface area is 58 square yards. I'm not getting that with any other iron. Wilson, can you send me a set?
So yeah, you're right, because at the end of the day, not only do you get, I mean, the only thing I would say is your height with these. You're just going to strap in the air. But to be honest with you, why wouldn't you use these? Forgiving irons.
Yeah.
Okay, so off-centered strike, still maintaining good ball speed.
Yep. Super accurate.
Super accurate. Like, does ego jump in anywhere along here?
100%. Ego has stopped me getting them, but the numbers are saying, Lee, you need to go and purchase these straight away. So if we then talk about looks and feel, looks, we both gave it to Wilson.
Yeah.
Sound and feel, you gave it to Wilson. So you gave it to 11, I gave it to Wilson. And the tech, we both gave it to 11.
Okay.
So overall, the 11 wins yours 3-2.
11 wins Wilson 3-2 for me.
And for me, the Wilson wins 4-1. And that's mainly because I wanted it to look and sound more like an iron.
Yeah.
The truth is, I think they're very inseparable. I think the two very different iron-looking irons.
Yeah.
But if we did that test again, we could probably flick the numbers around. Maybe not the distance because of the spin, but I think they're very, very close together.
The facts are, not enough people test and use these clubs.
No.
You know, just us hitting a few shots in here, and like you said, we've got to do more of this, possibly on the course testing with these, but they are so easy to hit. Off-centered strikes, and you know, don't get me wrong, we can both hit it off the middle of the club, away from the centre of the bat, but we're still getting decent ball speeds, we're still maintaining good distance, we're still pitching it up in the air. These are all good clubs. They're 100% worth what you should be going out and testing. And I'd like to know, are you testing? Are you keen to test these? Or is the ego jumping in and saying, no, I'm not having that in my golf bag, thank you very much. I don't want a bag for the head covers. All those sorts of things, that the common sort of statements that come out of people. So I'd like to know, are you interested in testing these clubs?
Every person I've ever fitted, not the Wilsons, but the Cleveland version into, has always said, I wish I'd done this years ago. All the time. Because they just help.
I said at the beginning of this video, easy to hit, 100% easy to hit. Both of them, you know. And that you're right, they're inseparable, they're just different in their sound and looks.
100%.
Well, I'd like to hear what you think, though, down in the comments down below. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and Lee and I will see you all again very soon.
Saturday.